Here's a look at recap of your markets on this Friday, the first day of August. It's Friday afternoon, so like always, a lot to get through this afternoon, so we'll jump right in it and get to it. Negotiated feedlot trade for the week as of the 2 o'clock cutoff time on Friday afternoon, 57,291 head. Texas reported 3,880, all at 235. Kansas, 7,738 head. Most of those sales 235, some of the later sales at 236. Iowa reported 16,927 head. The live sales there mostly all at 245 this week. Dress sales mostly at 383. There was a few late sales there at 385. In Nebraska, 20,827 head. Again, the early sales there at 245. They saw some live sales late in Nebraska at 247. The dress sales mostly at 383, but a few late sales in the week at 386. Box beef cutout values, choice down $3.46 compared to last Friday, 363.22. Select, 340.50. That was down $4.32 compared to last Friday. Those box beef values have just continued to drop about all month. For the month of July, choice lost $34.28. Select was down $38.69 for the month. Taking a look at some of the stickout sales and what happened at the auction barns around the state this week. Another very light week, less than 12,000 head this week through the auction barns around the state. First half of the week, when most of the auctions are, of course, it was still very hot. We hadn't broke that heat wave yet, so receipts were very light. That being said, the market's still very strong. Quite surprising given that there was so few big drafts and long strings coming in, but even with that, several new record prices set once again this week. The Missouri Stalker formula, it was up about every day this week. Friday's price, a new all-time record, 408.85. The CME feeder cattle index, based on an 800-pound steer up through the 12-state feeding region, it set a new record pretty much every day as well. Friday at 335.89. That just shows how much demand and how much buyers really need and want to get some cattle bought right now. Taking a look at some of the stick-out sales from around the auction barns this week. 45 head of 506-pound steers sold at China Livestock Auction on Monday at $446. The weighted average price now on those light 5-weight steers statewide up to $421. 20 head of 621-pound steers at Kingsville brought $405. 76 head of 697-pound steers sold on Thursday at Mid-Missouri Stockyards in Phillipsburg at $373.50. Had a load of 713-pound steers at Joplin at $356. The weight average price this week on the light 7-weight steers at $352. A load of 791-pound steers at Kingsville sold at $350. China Livestock Auction had a few loads of some 8-weights this week. 2 loads of 835-pound steers brought $347.85. 2 loads of 874-pound steers at China Livestock Auction, $330.75. Lawley Brothers Livestock Market, they sold a load of 945-pound steers this week at $317.50. Taking a look at some stick-out sales on the heifers this week. 23 head of 515-pound heifers at Joplin on Monday brought $380. The average statewide on those light 5 weights this week at $378. There was some sales that were higher than that, but very small drafts and nothing over 20 head. Lawley Brothers Livestock Market, they had several loads of 6-weight heifers this week. 241 head of 694-pound heifers sold at $352.50. 80 head of 658-pound heifers at Lawley Brothers, tagged as fancy, sold at $372.50. A load of 723-pound heifers at Kingsville brought $347. The average price statewide on those light 7-weight heifers this week, $340. Taking a look at the futures markets on the livestock side, of course, on Thursday, those cattle futures just took a whopping, and it took away everything that we had gained so far this week, taking them back pretty even to where we ended last week. But today was a positive day once again. They bounced back, and that did allow both the live and feeder cattle contracts to close higher for the week. Live cattle was 72 to 365 higher. Feeder cattle was 40 to 320 higher. The lean hogs, the nearby contracts closed slightly lower for the week, 55 cents to $1.35 lower. The distant contracts, they were slightly higher from a nickel to 15 cents. On Friday, August live cattle closed up 235 at 230.12. October 223.67 up 52. December 224.42 up 50. August feeder cattle up 320 on Friday, 334.57. September at 333.92 up 237. October at 331.85 up 167. August lean hogs 107.35 up 22. October at 90.05 up 47. And December 82.35 up 62. Taking a look at the grain markets, it was another fairly rough week for the grains, especially for the old crop, and that's where cash grain bids come in. They're all for immediate delivery, of course, so basically with the beans and corn all dealing with old crop prices right now, and they took an absolute walloping, especially on the soybeans, 40 to 67 lower for the week. Wheat was down 22 cents, corn 15 to 21 lower. On Friday, corn in the St. Louis region, 408 to 410. Kansas City at 396. Soybean bids in St. Louis on Friday, 980 and 981. Kansas City at 964. Wheat bids, now of course a lot of the elevators are starting to not accept any cash wheat, only taking stuff that's been contracted. Everybody looking towards that bumper crop of beans and corn, and a lot of those elevators, especially the smaller ones in the country, trying to make plenty of room for that and trying to get the wheat out of storage now that harvest is over. No current cash bids in Kansas City for wheat. St. Louis 489 to 491. On the Board of Trade for the week, soybeans were 30 to 37 lower, wheat 19 to 21 lower, corn 8 to 10 lower. The soybean meal 30 cents to $1.50 lower. Friday's closes, corn September 4.5 lower, 389.5. December 410 3/4 down 3. March at 428 1/4 down 2 1/4. The first 3 months of soybean contracts were all unchanged on Friday. August 961 3/4, September 969.5, November 989 1/4. September wheat down 6.5, 516 3/4. December 537 down 5.5. March at 555 3/4 down a nickel. Soybean meal for August up $5.70 a ton at $267.50. Soybean oil for August down 86 cents a hundredweight at $54.72. With the Missouri Department of Agriculture, that's a recap of your markets for this week. This is Tony Hancock.